The road did not ask Adani where she was going, it only demanded that she keep moving. By the time the sun rose fully, her feet were blistered, her throat dry, her body aching with a fatigue deeper than muzzle. The men who escorted her stopped at the border of Omochi, handed her a small pouch of cowries and turned back without a word. No farewell, no mercy. The land beyond felt unfamiliar beneath her feet, same earth, same sky, yet stripped of belonging. Adani stood alone at the crossroads. The silence so loud it rang in her ears. That was when the sickness began. At first she thought it was grief, the nausea, the dizziness, the sudden waves of weakness that bent her forward until her palms pressed into the dusk. She blamed hunger, she blamed fear, the weight of walking away from everything she had ever known, from the man her soul craved. But days passed, then weeks, and the sickness stayed. She found shelter in a small farming village near the borders of another kingdom, a place forgotten by power and spared of its cruelty. The people there were poor but unguarded, their lives ruled by seasons rather than crowns. They asked no questions when she offered to walk. They didn't ask her name twice. When the village healer placed a hand on her belly, her eyes softened. "You carry life, my child," the woman said gently. Adani laughed once, shocked, disbelieving, and then she cried. She cried for the river, she cried for Obinna. She cried for her baby who may never get to meet his father. And when the tears ended, she pressed her palm to her stomach and whispered into the quiet, "I will stay." Pregnancy grounded her in ways grief could not unmoor. She walked slowly, carefully. She learned to rest when the sun burned too fiercely. At night she spoke softly to the growing life inside her, telling stories of a river that remembered names, of a man who loved without knowing how to protect, of a kingdom that mistook fear for wisdom. She never spoke of the palace. The boy was born during the harmattan when the air was dry and the wind carried dust like secrets. His cry was strong. When she held him, something ancient and fierce rose inside her chest. Not hope, not joy, but resolve. She named him Ikenna, a father's strength. Years passed, grief changed shape. It softened at the edges but deepened at the center, like a river that learned to carve instead of flood. Adani became known for her quiet strength, her kindness, her refusal to bend under bitterness. She did not get married. She did not explain why, despite many asking. Ikenna grew quickly, curious, observant, solemn in ways that startled adults. He asked questions that felt too heavy for his age. He listened more than he spoke. And sometimes at dusk, he would look east and ask, "Mama, where did the sun rise when you were a girl?" She would answer, "Towards home." And then she would turn away so he wouldn't see her face. Back in Omochi, Prince Obinna aged without moving forward. 6 seasons of rain had passed, 6 years of mourning for a woman who had never died, and in that distance, between a grave and a living child, fate waited patiently, sharpening its return. Time did not heal Prince Obinna. It merely taught him how to endure pain without screaming. The palace continued its ritual with cruel precision. Seasons turned. Festivals came and went. New cloth was woven, new titles bestowed, new alliances discussed in voices polished smooth by ambition. Omochi prospered, or so the elders said, but its air was rotten quietly at the center. Obinna no longer argued with his parents. Resistance required energy, and grief had drained him of all but the minimum needed to breathe. He attended councils, nodded at decisions, spoke only when pressed. His once commanding presence dimmed into something spectral, still respected, still feared, but hollowed out. Servants whispered that the prince walked like a man carrying a grave inside his chest. At night he dreamt of Adani, not always as she was. Sometimes she stood by the river, smiling sadly, unreachable. Sometimes she lay in the earth, eyes open, accusing. Sometimes she called his name from a distance he could never cross. He woke each time with his heart hammering, his hands clenched, the taste of soil in his mouth. He went to the cemetery often. It was the only place where his grief did not have to pretend. He knelt by her grave and spoke to her.
Why did you leave me?
Of things he had done, of things he had failed to do, of how the world had continued without asking his permission. I should have fought harder, he told the earth once, his voice breaking. I should have chosen you and let the crown burn. The grave offered no absolution. Queen Nkiru watched her son retreat inward and mistook silence for surrender. By the 60th year, she decided it was time to finish what she had begun. You must marry, she said one evening, her tone final. The kingdom requires it. Obinna did not look at her. He just responded, I am already buried. The king slammed his staff against the floor. You live! King Ezudo thundered, and as long as you live, you will serve Umochi. They presented him with a bride, beautiful, wealthy, obedient, a daughter of influence, a woman raised to understand power and its bargain. She knelt before him, eyes lowered. I will be a good queen, she said. Obinna felt nothing. Not anger, not desire, not even resentment, just emptiness. I will do my duty, he said quietly. That night, he walked again to the cemetery. Rain fell softly, soaking the earth, blurring the edges of the world. He knelt before Adani's grave one last time. They are taking the future from me, he whispered, and I'm too tired to stop them, my love. Expecting to hear the echoes of silence, rather what he heard shook his system. Mama says one day you will visit here. Froze. He turned slowly. A boy stood a few feet away, barefoot, his wrapper damp with mud, his eyes too serious for a child no older than 5. He held a small bundle of wildflowers clutched awkwardly in his hand. Obinna's breath caught painfully in his chest. You should not be here, he said hoarsely. The boy tilted his head. I come with Mama, he replied. She says we must greet the dead. Obinna stared at him, at the familiar curve of his brows, the stubborn set of his mouth, the gaze that felt like looking into a mirror cracked by time. What is your name? Obinna asked. Ikenna, he responded. I am my father's strength. And who is your father? The prince asked. That is none of your business, sir. But if you must know, then you need to meet my mother. Ikenna replied. The little boy's words struck Prince Obinna like thunder. And where is your mother? Prince Obinna whispered. The boy smiled faintly and pointed towards the road that led beyond Omoji, beyond graves, beyond lies, beyond everything Obinna had believed for 6 long years. My mama, he said, pointing at the grave, is not dead. The earth beneath Obinna's knees seemed to give way. For the first time in 6 years, something inside him that was not grief stirred. It was terror and it was hope.
If this story stirred your heart and awakened your curiosity, don't stop here. Subscribe now for deeper mysteries, intense emotions, shocking twists, and unforgettable stories you won't want to miss.